third for setting a screen.
Because of physical play, although Jordan Taylor just got caught with a moving screen. Izzo's dying for a moving screen.
It's that dreaded moving screen.
Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of the Moving Screen Podcast. I'm Brendan Quinn of The Athletic, here with Dylan Burkhart, UM Hoops. It's Valentine's Day.
Yeah,
honey.
How was your Valentine's Day?
Oh, delightful.
That's good. I
You know
nice
me.
Valentine's
I'm quite the romantic. How about you?
Yeah, definitely. As much as you can be in COVID times, but get some fancy takeout and some fancy things is nice. How about you?
Did my thing, man. Did
All
my
right.
thing.
There you go.
Michigan did its thing.
Michigan did its thing.
We are recording on Sunday night, so this game's still pretty fresh. We decided just to get together, knock this thing out. Big win for Michigan. We'll talk about Michigan State on the back end of this, but obviously we're going to kind of lean in here to Michigan's win at Wisconsin after 3 weeks of pause. So
I'm not sure anyone wants us to lean into Saturday's game.
I don't think so. Before we get into things, for those interested in subscribing to UM Hoops, of which I'm a loyal subscriber, what do you have from this game? What do you have moving forward?
We have our usual post-game package, so to speak. We have my recap up there on the site. We have 5 takeaways up there on the site. We have a story about kind of Michigan's toughness and what this win says about what this team is and how they are as a contender. Tomorrow we'll have 5 key plays. So we can keep you entertained for days about this game. I mean, we're roared up and ready to go after 3 weeks with no games to cover, so we're not going to take any for granted. How about over at The Athletic? Did you write about Jordan Spieth today or Michigan?
Did you say you're roaring up?
I don't know. It's late, man.
We both got the beers going. This is going to be a good pod, I think, Dylan.
All right. Well, I got to get in the zone here.
All right. So
making up words.
My plugs for this week. First, make sure to check out my other pod with Nick. Wednesday, we're scheduled to have Dave Warlock from the NCAA on. That's a good get this time of year. So I think it's going to be a good educational podcast for folks out there. So make sure you check that out. Wrote about Michigan State yesterday. I did not write about Jordan Spieth coming up short again this week. Instead, wrote a little Juwan Howard off of this game. There were a lot. We'll just get right into this in this conversation. There were a lot of things to write about off of this game. You could go heavy on the defense. You could go, Isaiah Livers kind of having one of those second half senior year type games, right? Just making ballsy shots, doing what you want a guy like Isaiah Livers to do. Hunter Dickinson obviously makes Michigan different. His offensive rebounds late in the game were just killers. Greg Gard called them backbreakers in that game. He, by himself, outplayed 2 Wisconsin centers. But I ended up kind of going with Juwan. And, I feel like this game, the way Michigan came back from 23 days, a 23-day layoff, I should say, the collectedness, the composure, the game plan, response to adversity, both on the scoreboard, with officials, whatever it may be, right? Like, I thought this game very much kind of embodied what Juwan Howard has been as a head coach of this program. They're 17-5 in the Big Ten going back to late January of last year. And, you can't ignore this anymore. Like he's very much in the National Coach of the Year conversation. And, I feel like his coaching and the coaching of this staff has Michigan ranked first in the Big Ten in defensive efficiency, third in the Big Ten in offensive efficiency. But who this team is speaks to kind of who Juwan Howard is.
Yeah, I think what's really interesting is like everyone sort of tried to piece together this view of who Juwan Howard is, right? Like he doesn't really love talking about himself, but the things that people say, like the things that come up are consistent, right? Like it wasn't, Juwan Howard was calm under pressure at halftime in this game and everyone talked about it. It's the same thing that Michigan players say he says at halftime in the Oakland game or whatever other game, right? So the Nebraska game, right? If you go back and compare what Michigan players said about his halftime message in that game where like Nebraska, I think, made a bunch of threes and he just came in and laughed or clapped or something like that. Same thing. So I think it really speaks to that he's establishing a consistent culture that like is legitimate. It's like actually what he believes in. And I think we're seeing some of the results of that. You can go to another example. If you look at the play where after the technical, he dials up a play from Mike Smith. Like that's just who he is as a coach. He did the exact same thing when Sean D. Brown got a technical foul back earlier in the year. He really trusts and enables his players to an extent that I think is really only possible if you were a player, to be honest, right? Like I don't know.
I think he sees the game as a coach, feels the game as a player.
Yeah, and he leans into that in a way that I think gives him trust from his players in a way that I just don't see very common across college basketball.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think his credibility is through the roof. And I mean, he is legit. And this, his ability to kind of keep this thing together. I was talking to Martelli on Friday and kind of unsolicited. He just goes, it's the job that Juwan Howard did keeping this thing together over those 3 weeks was just like unbelievable the way Martelli was describing it. Cause he was nervous about it. Right. I mean, he was sitting in his condo for 2 weeks waiting for this thing to get back on the tracks, being like, man, and Phil, somebody he's going to go into, oh my God, this might happen. This might happen. This might happen. It's very much the opposite of Juwan in those ways. And he was just like, dude, I was blown away. By the way, this guy just kind of kept everything right in front of everybody. And, just that connectedness. And the thing about Juwan and Michigan is that like they talk in all these cliches, but like after a while, shit, man, you got to believe it because they keep saying that they're going to do these things and then they do it. So, a lot of credit there.
And that's contagious, right? Mm-hmm. You can say we're going to do this and it's going to work, but if you start losing games, all of a sudden you lose your buy-in, right? It's easy to establish a culture and preach a culture when you're winning games, right? People like buy-in is contagious. It grows exponentially as from good results. And I think that's what you see where Michigan looked kind of up and down in those early games if you think back. And sure. I think that the general process of, okay, this is starting to work. I see how this is coming together. When you start to see results, it just brings everyone along for the ride, right? Like, okay, everything he's saying seems to work. I mean, maybe we should just do exactly what he says, right? It's pretty natural.
Yeah, and I think you see that like the first half was a great example of that, right? So Michigan's coming back. Who knows what they're going to look like? I'm sure they were just as curious as we were. And lo and behold, Wisconsin comes out and starts banging threes. Aleem Ford's hitting threes. He goes 3 for 3, right? Like Wisconsin gave Michigan every reason to just kind of be like, shit. Well, we expected this could go bad. It's going to go bad. Just, take the L, get out of here and focus on Rutgers. You get the first game out of the way. And it was anything but that. That second half defensively, I mean, they went from, I thought, responding kind of to what Wisconsin was doing offensively to attacking Wisconsin's offense. Like they went at them and Wisconsin couldn't break Michigan down one-on-one anymore. They couldn't do anything anymore.
Yeah, I think the first half, Michigan's defense probably looked worse than it was. And the second half, Michigan's defense probably looked better than it was, right? If you flip around some of the 3-point shooting numbers, maybe that all looks a little different big picture. But I do think you have to look. Wisconsin was getting to the rim and finishing in the first half. Wisconsin only made one dunk or layup in the second half. Basically, all Wisconsin could get was sort of these in-between runners and floaters from Johnny Davis and Demetric Trice. And Michigan will let you try to beat it that way. And it's just not a sustainable way to play. And I think that definitely comes to a mentality thing. I think Michigan attacked it. But also, if you make a couple of those threes in that second half, from Wisconsin's point of view, you might be looking at a different game. So the 3-point shot is still the great equalizer and all that because the truth is always somewhere in the middle when it comes to 3-point shooting. But it takes a lot of trust in what you're doing defensively to say, okay, we're fine. Just keep doing what we're doing. Keep playing it this way and the results will come. And then Wisconsin is sort of in that other side of that trust where they have no belief that those shots are going to fall. So the minute the game got tight, I think you start to see them fray a little bit. And that's a team that hasn't won 2 games in a row for a month or whatever. So that's the same thing we're talking about with good results are contagious. And we started to see Wisconsin just wasn't comfortable.
Yeah. What was your take on the Davison play? It was a big moment. It was a big moment.
Yeah, it was a big moment.
That was not small. Like, I don't know. I didn't hear Wisconsin really talk about it in their post game, but I don't think you can poo-poo what happened there.
No, it definitely woke Michigan up. And I think Michigan was like Michigan scored the first play of the second half. Like they were woken up a bit already, but I just think that, I don't know, it just speaks to Brad Davison. I mean, the man shoots 22% on layups and he manages to throw an elbow on a layup. Like he's clearly focused on the wrong thing. I think it was somewhat intentional. He knew that Mike Smith had punked him in the last game. They had been going at it. He was frustrated, hadn't got going. It's not surprising he missed the layup when he did that, right? If it was a normal basketball play, I would expect that he would maybe not throw his elbow out into Mike Smith's face, but what do I know? I mean, the man makes plays like this all the time. I know.
All the time. And like in this case, it was a detriment. Like it was a detriment to the team.
It was also insane that Michigan managed to get a technical on that play and still somehow came out for the better, right? But that's also something like Juwan Howard, man. He wanted to back up his player, and he did it, even though it was, a 10-point game. They're losing on the road. I don't think every coach would do that. And I know the technical was on the bench, not him, but he seemed pretty adamant that it was a dirty play. And he's probably been around. He's probably been around a few elbows in his day. I think he probably knows.
Yeah. I would imagine, if I'm Greg Gard, I'm pissed at that play. You gave him reason to dial things up even more. And I agree with you. I thought Michigan was already kind of trending the right way in the beginning of that half, and they could have very well won that game if that play never happened. But it's very much a don't poke the bear type deal. Like Michigan beat you was up by 40 in the second half the last time these two teams played. Like, is that really the group that you're going to want to try to light a fire under their ass? Not a good call.
No, but that's just what we've seen. I mean, 4 years of this. It's not new. I know Isaiah Livers defended Brad Davison in postgame, said he knows him off the court and he's a great guy. But man, the track record speaks for itself.
That's the thing, is that the benefit, you lose the benefit of the doubt.
Can we talk a little bit about Hunter Dickinson's ball screen defense? I found it incredible that he was able
him checking Travis Trice.
Demetric Trice. If he was checking Travis Trice, we really have to go deep into the archives. But his ability to play in space, whether it was on switches, they would switch a lot of ball screens late, whether it was just kind of in his drop coverage. I mean, I watched a lot of his video this summer because there was nothing else to do. And I didn't ever see him blocking 5 shots, mostly helping on to perimeter players. I thought that was really impressive. I think it's really impressive that he's been able to find new ways to impact the game when the one thing he was doing to dominate games earlier isn't really working for him, right? Like he's not scoring 5 or 6 post-ups a game and just dominating down low. He's struggling to make some of those shots. Guys are playing really physically, but he's figuring out a new way to impact the game, both with his defense and his offensive rebounding. I think that's credit to just his development as a player and being able to handle a bit of adversity too.
Yeah, it's the two things that won't show up in box scores. It's, that the ball screen defense, and then also, leaving your space to get rebounds. Like you just see 4 offensive rebounds. Well, those weren't rebounds that were just like hitting the rim and hitting him in the chest. Like, he was reading balls, right? Like he was moving around, and it's completely different than what you saw 6 weeks ago, right? Where he was just kind of, he turned his back and tried to find a body and rebound. And now I think he's starting to see himself as an active rebounder. And if he's an active rebounder in the offensive end, well, there's your offense, right? I imagine that this is probably something that Juwan Howard is telling him, right? Defenses are keying on you. You want to score, right? Well, if you want to score, one of your easiest ways right now is going to be from offensive rebounding. And, to Dickinson's credit, though, he also still has the instincts and the want to be a willing passer. So when he gets an offensive rebound, it isn't the automatic, right? Head down, one shitty pound dribble, jump into the basket and try to get a layup. Like, his head's still up. The ball's still up, and he will find an open man. He did that on Isaiah Livers, and that was the dagger in this game.
Mm-hmm. To be fair, the stats do show up in the box score. He had 15 rebounds. Micah Potter and Rivers had 0 rebounds in the entire game, and he blocked 5 shots. That's a pretty. I meant the type of rebounds.
I
was honestly almost more impressed that he was able to get 10 defensive rebounds, because there was a point early in the year where I think he really struggled to go and get the ball. Like, I think he's been a better offensive rebounder than defensive rebounder probably this season. So I think all that is progress, though. And I mean, rebounding out of your area is a hard thing to grasp, especially when you're playing against more athletic players than you've ever played against. I just can't believe that Rivers and Potter didn't grab a rebound in the entire game. That blows my mind.
I think that says as much about Potter and Rivers as it does about Dickinson.
And it says a lot. I mean, that
you can't let that happen. I don't give a shit if you're, dude. I don't give a shit if you're playing like Charles Oakley back in his prime when he just got every rebound, like Dennis Rodman. I don't care.
I mean, everyone else
not get a rebound from the center position. What the hell? Like 180-pound Mo Wagner as a freshman could find a way to get one rebound every once in a while.
The only other player on the court today who didn't get a rebound was Brandon Johns, and he only played 4 minutes. Everyone else who saw the floor got at least one rebound. Mike Smith, who else? Trevor Anderson, he grabbed 3, but they're too big, couldn't get a single rebound. I mean, if I was a Wisconsin anyone, I would just be losing my mind over that stat. And that kind of explains what's going on with this team, because they've been back and forth in the lineup. They should be 2 of Wisconsin's 3 best players, and they're just not. And Wisconsin doesn't have a 4th best player, and that's sort of where we're at.
So Livers, what were your thoughts on not only his game, but kind of where his game is in a bigger picture?
So, I mean, within the scope of just this game, I think the only reason Michigan had a chance to be in this game was because of how well he played offensively in the first half. He just hit big shots, and really, like, he hit the huge shot to end the first half. It was a tough pull-up, too. Like, those are the buckets that you need to stay alive. Those are the buckets you need a senior to go out and get. And I think really he was turning the corner as far as looking for his offense in that last week before Michigan shut down, and he picked up right where he left off. He's just too efficient not to take 15 shots a game. And I thought he was really aggressive, looking kind of for his ISO one-on-one offense at times when he had a mismatch. And I thought he played pretty well at those spots, right? Like he's too good of a scorer not to be more aggressive. And it's really, I mean, if you think about it from Michigan's point of view, you have this whole Mike Smith ball screen package, you have this whole post-up package, and then you have Livers and Wagner as threats to really do anything off the wing. And they're like, I don't know, it's tough to defend. And if Livers is going to keep playing this aggressively, it really kind of opens up the ceiling for what this team can be on offense, I think.
Yeah, I think it's this was one of those games where you actually saw Isaiah and Franz kind of both doing their thing in the same way, right? Franz kind of getting his variety of shots, these little floaters, these little leaning shots, all these things that he can do. And then Livers just hunting jumpers and hitting them and being confident. And both of those guys just very much dialed in to getting their offense, right? And it's taken some time. And I think a lot of this, when you said about how like kind of uneasy things were in the beginning of the season, speaks to like the great point that you made early on, that these two it just didn't quite work yet. Those two playing with each other, plus shoehorning in a true post center that suddenly you want to be creating post touches for. Like it it took a minute for everyone to, I think, like the right hand to know what the left hand was doing, I think, all the way around.
Yeah, and it did. And also bringing a new point guard into the mix, right? That was a huge part of that transition and a huge part of, I think, why everyone looks more comfortable by the game offensively, right? You have a guy who's content to, I mean, we talked in the preseason, will Mike Smith be hunting shots? Mike Smith doesn't really hunt shots. He runs the team, gets guys in position, and Eli Brooks is also a perfect offensive cog in that regard, where he does a lot of moving the ball, not hunting his shot, which is really like you can't have 4 or 5 guys on the team who are trying to use 25% of the offensive possessions, right? The math doesn't work, obviously. So if you have a guy who's content to be in that secondary role, it really just helps everything flow. And I think Michigan's backcourt play has really enabled that and allowed the wings to flourish, and they've really come into those roles. I do think Michigan's gotten away a little bit from Hunter Dickinson in the post. I know he missed a few shots, but it seems like you go 6-7 minute stretches where he doesn't really get a post touch. And I don't know if that's on him, if that's on what Michigan's trying to do, but that's something I'm kind of watching for of late, because that was a really dominant part of what Michigan did. And I don't really think, like, he didn't get his offense going. I don't really think it's because Wisconsin was bringing crazy doubles. It was just Michigan going in another direction a bit and not really getting him the ball. I mean, that's obviously partly on him establishing position and whatever else. But again, there's just so many ways this offense can beat you.
Yeah, I think one of the next steps for Dickinson is probably that, like, making very aggressive post moves in terms of showing yourself and things like that. Like, is it me, and maybe it's just the way that he moves and things like that.
Could do a whole podcast on the way that he moves. He doesn't lift his feet up. It's
he doesn't. Yeah, him running down the court is hilarious. Imagine if he moved like Garza. Jesus Christ, he'd be the national player of the year. But you see, you know what I mean? Like, I wonder how much of that is that things did come really early, really easy early, especially playing the competition that Michigan played, right? Where Hunter Dickinson showing himself amounted to putting his arm up, right? And just throw him the ball, and he would just be guarded by some 6'7" guy, and he would just go get a bucket. Well, it's not that anymore. So, him learning how to probably bury guys a little bit more and get, pin guys to his hip and move them and show himself and be an active postman is something that you're going to want to see and look for probably in the coming weeks, especially going into the NCAA.
Yeah, it's more, I would say, his post touches are usually plays where he wins the post battle before he catches the ball, which usually you're going to do against weaker defenders. If against a better defender, he can't win before he catches the ball, and he's not quite robust enough or creative enough as a back to the basket scorer that he can get to his spots every time, right? He doesn't really have that counter or those secondary moves. So it's all about, can I get to my shot? And if not, I'm going to kind of miss. So I think that's probably the next step for him. And I don't know if that's going to come this year. Just his sheer presence makes it really hard, though, because you have to spend a lot of your defensive game plan of how we're going to keep him off his spots, right? So that's still a huge weapon, even when you only go to it 4 or 5 times. Like, Wisconsin spent a lot of their game plan, I'm sure, how to defend the post. And that gives you a threat that it's like a gravity inside that opens everything up for the rest of the offense.
Were you okay with the minute distribution at the 5 today?
So I have a couple thoughts on this. First, I think Austin Davis played one of his best shifts of the year in the second half. I thought he really stabilized Michigan offense. He had a couple post touches and scored in there, and he held his own defensively. I still think he would be better served to play one TV timeout segment instead of staying in past that segment. That's probably nitpicking, but I think just given what you have with Hunter Dickinson and given Austin Davis's conditioning, I just think he'd be better. Like, I don't think he ever necessarily plays well in the minutes 4 through 6, right? Like, just play him the 4-minute segment, go back to Dickinson. If you need to play Davis again, fine. I also think Brandon Johns, I less and less, I see the purpose of playing him at the 4 because you have Shawnee Brown only playing 18 minutes a game. I'd rather give those minutes to Shawnee Brown and then put Johns, just focus on playing the 5. So when we play a pick and pop 5 in the NCAA tournament and we're getting destroyed, we have another option, right? Like that would be my game plan if I was going to fix that rotation.
Yeah, like Dickinson playing 27 minutes today, like that feels right to me.
Especially given the number of games Michigan's going to have to play here coming up.
Well, all right. I'll address that in 1 second. But like, so if you're going to have 13 minutes that it's not Dickinson at the 5, I would just like to see that. I'd like to see Brandon Johns get a shot at that, but I also understand why they go with Davis at this point. And I think a lot of it is the fact that there are some times where you put Johns out there,
like today,
and you have no idea what you're going to get. You have no idea what you're going to get.
And that was the case today.
And
that's not how you get on the court. There are some games where you
can do that. Exactly.
We talk about that.
There are some games where you can do it. There are some games you can't. Yeah.
Bingham might be Michigan State's best defensive big, but if half the time you go on the court, you don't do what you're supposed to do, it's really hard to put you on the court in games that matter. And that I think Michigan trusts that Austin Davis will try to be in the right spot in every possession he's on the court. I don't think Michigan trusts that Brandon Johns will be in the right spot in every possession. So Johns has that upside. I think he can do a lot defensively as a 5, but he just keeps zigzagging between the 2 roles, and he never quite gets comfortable, right? He'll be comfortable one game, not the next. And I think that's frustrating probably for everyone involved because like the Purdue game, I thought Johns gave Michigan really good minutes as a small ball 5. So it's just, then he gets a 3-week pause and probably has to reset a bit. So it's tough. What do you think about the playing time situation as far as like getting more games in? Do you think Michigan needs to go deeper on the bench? Obviously, Franz and Isaiah played 38 minutes today.
We talked about it, I think, on the last pod where, we were kind of batting that back and forth if that's something that's going to have to be considered. And if it is, how do you do it? Conversations I had in the program last week, it was not something on the table.
You mean like playing
of going
guys aggressively,
going into games with, all right, let's map this out this way. We need to be having these guys limited for this.
Load management, so to speak.
Load management, right. As of going into this week, from the conversations I had, was not even in the conversation. Is it something that could be in the back of Juwan Howard's mind? Yeah, I get it because you're
in a Big Ten title race.
Function that way, right? You're going to go play games to play games, and just for the hell of it, in the moment, you're not just going to put Zeb Jackson in just because we have Zeb Jackson penciled in for 4 first half minutes, right? Because then he takes 2 or 3 ill-advised threes, gets beat on defense, and
you lost.
Assholes like you and me are like, what the hell is Zeb Jackson doing on the floor, right? No disrespect to Zeb Jackson, but you get the point.
Yeah, he's just not ready to play Big Ten minutes in a championship race. It's just different stakes.
But you're just not going to roll these guys. You're not going to roll Terrence Williams out for extended playing time right now. Like you're trying to win games. These are games that matter a lot. And if you have that luxury in the second half of some games, right, you can go beat the piss out of someone. Great. But if you're not, they're not going to be just doing it for the sake of doing it.
Here's my question. Should Shawnee Brown get minutes at the 3 or 4? Right now, like if you look at Michigan's rotation,
you have to find a way.
So Brown played 18 minutes, and they were the 18 minutes that one of Eli and Mike weren't on the court. Franz and Isaiah played 38 minutes each, and the 4 minutes they were off the court, Brandon Johns on the court. Like,
Yeah.
One, you can get everyone more
whatever
rest.
you have to do to get Shawnee Brown more minutes, I think you have to do. And first of all, I don't think Franz or Isaiah need to be playing 38 minutes in a game. They have too much depth for that. What's the point of having Shawnee Brown if you're going to play those guys 38 minutes?
It seems to be that they think Shawnee Brown is a 2 and they want him there and they want to give Brandon that chance at the 4. But again, it's just, for me, I think in the NCAA tournament, you just have to get to that point where Shawnee Brown's playing 25 minutes a game and he's playing basically all your bench minutes at the 1, 2, 3, and 4. The math can work. He's good. I know he didn't play great today, but everyone loves to talk about how much they love Shawnee Brown. Well, just play him for all those minutes, right? I mean, it's just so obvious to me when I look at it. And I don't think you have to do it now necessarily. But I think you want to get to that point in some of, like, you're going to play Ohio State coming up. You're going to play Illinois. Like, try out what you're going to do when the chips are down in the NCAA tournament in those games and see if you can play that way, because it feels like we get this first half Brandon Johns audition and he doesn't always perform. And you can't have Brandon Johns come in a game in the first half of a round of 32 NCAA tournament game and turn the ball over or miss an assignment. Like, that's how you lose.
Well, and here's the thing. What does Brandon Johns give you at the 4 that Shawnee Brown doesn't give you? Nothing, right?
A little
Brandon
more
Johns can give you something at the 5, though.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but like, yeah, I mean, Shawnee Brown plays bigger than he is. But like, Brandon can give you something at the 5, though, that Austin Davis doesn't give you. He gives you a different look. He gives you a stretch option, right? He makes teams guard you differently. But there's no reason for him to play at the 4 if you have Shawnee Brown. Like, the 3 and the 4 and the 2, whatever, that's the minutes. They go to him. He's way too productive. He's way too important. And you want to keep, and like, he's a dog, man. Like, I want to keep him as engaged as humanly possible because he's going to win you games in March.
I agree. I mean, he's played in the teams.
I'm not saying he would disengage, but you know what I mean.
In 4 Big Ten games already, he hasn't got over 20 minutes, and I just think that there's no reason he shouldn't be up at 25. So I know it's probably like not his best game. He got beat on a bunch of baseline out of bounds sets and only scored a point, but I just think that's the move long term, and it'll be interesting to see if Michigan gets there as the season wears on. Because that's also the answer.
When I was on, was it? Good.
No, I was going to say it's also the answer for Michigan's, like, to rest guys, right? You don't have to, like, the reason Franz and Isaiah played the whole second half is because they didn't want to put Brandon Johns in the game, right? I mean, so it all comes back to trust, like, just let him start experimenting in that role more often.
Yeah. When I was on Stu Douglas's podcast, I don't know, it's like 3 weeks ago. It was like 6 minutes into the podcast. He was like, how can Michigan get Shawnee Brown more minutes? So we're not the only ones talking. People that are far smarter than I, at least. I don't know about you, but agree.
Yeah, no, it makes complete sense. And it's not like it's even not at the expense of a starter, really, right? It's just adjusting how you use him. So that makes sense. No,
he should be a 6th starter, basically.
Yeah, just play 20. He should be the only reserve. And I know everyone wants, like, depth in numbers and whatever else, but I just don't see it. I don't know. And especially in the NCAA tournament, when you get longer breaks and everything else, depth becomes even less important, I feel like.
Right. All right, what else you got?
Can we talk a little bit about the shot Eli Brooks took with about 4 minutes left? The little turnaround jumper, driving to the basket with about 23 seconds on the shot clock.
Okay, you can talk about it because I'm not having a mental picture here. Maybe I was tweeting or something.
All right, so he had been struggling, right? He was 1 of 9, I think, on the day.
Yes.
He basically misses all of these mid-range jumpers all year. I think I had a stat here. I'm going to find it. he's 3 of 14 on other twos on the season, including this make. And Michigan was down 3 with 4 minutes left. He takes a dribble handoff and just gets right into the paint, does a little reverse pivot, and then puts up a little turnaround jumper. I think he gives so much to Michigan on defense, but for him to make that shot in that situation, I thought was a huge play. And I think it kind of it took a lot of, just confidence to go and take that when you're struggling that much. I was just impressed with that. I like to give Eli a little shout out here because he gets lost in the mix of.
Yeah, I think what you see from Eli is a very good example of what experience means, having seniors means, because I remember Eli Brooks as a freshman, as a sophomore, even parts of last year. This was not a dude filled with confidence and a guy who, if he had a bad shooting day, would be confident that, the 9th or 10th shot would be going down. But he's played 100 and God knows how many, 120 college games, whatever, right? So he plays that way, right? And he knows in the moment, it doesn't matter what happened before that you keep shooting and, the shots are going to find a way. And he's made big shots in his career and he's going to make more. It's a benefit that Michigan has that very few teams in the country have. And when I look at Michigan's Final Four hopes, or if you even want to go further and say national championship hopes, when you have a guy who's the 5th option at any given time, who has the experience that Eli Brooks has and has done things that Eli Brooks has done, that can't be measured in metrics or whatever the hell else you want to come up with. And Michigan has that across the board in terms of its experience. And it's why, I think the ceiling is really, really high for March.
Yeah, and that comes into play on both sides of the court, I think, as far as your defensive performance too, right? This team just can really adjust to a game on the fly defensively and really did that in the second half. And there's just, you have 3 seniors in the starting lineup. You have 2 seniors off the bench, and then you have a pro in Franz Wagner. It's really just an unfair amount of experience. Franz Wagner played every game last year as a starter, right? He's pretty experienced in the scheme of things. So it's a huge differentiator, and I think it'll pay dividends down the stretch.
I will not be the least bit surprised if and when Eli Brooks wins Michigan a game in the NCAA tournament. Right. And we all write the senior story. Everyone has seen this happen before. This is just what happens. And we talked about, I think in the last pod, this team and, your hopes for a Big Ten championship, your hopes for an NCAA tournament run. And I don't think it can be undersold what Michigan has in this window. And who knows, I know all this stuff with the NCAA rules and the potential for guys coming back for extra years and all that stuff. But it is just exceedingly rare for you to have a team that is this old and this experienced and then also has a legit first round pick in a guy like Franz Wagner. It has a legit, guy who's going to be drafted as a center in the NBA in Hunter Dickinson. This is a recipe that coaches don't get in their careers, let alone right in your second year. And you have to figure out a way to just maximize it because this is it, man. These chances come in vacuums.
Yeah. And that comes into a big part of how you manage kind of the stretch run leading into the NCAA tournament, because at the end of the day, whatever happens with this team is going to be judged on the NCAA tournament. So it's kind of a finesse as far as, can you go and win the Big Ten title, but really, can you do everything in a way that makes you most ready to make a run in March?
Yes.
I think it seems like as of now, we can say Michigan's not going to play on Tuesday. I think that's a huge break as far as rescheduled games, because I think that would have been a nightmare spot coming off a Sunday game as far as makeup games. And I think you can probably assume that Michigan will play 2 games the following week in those makeup windows. At least it seems like to me. But that will be interesting as far as the legs go, because Thursday gives you a little time to actually recover versus a quick turnaround after that first game back.
Yeah, that if they were playing Tuesday, it would kind of be throw your hands up and say get through the game without anyone tweaking a hamstring or something, right? Thursday, Rutgers, it's still not ideal. It is at home. That's great for Michigan, but man, that's a tough team to play in the game that, as we've talked about here, people say this is when the physical side kind of shows itself more so in the first game, because I thought Michigan looked pretty good running around, right? It didn't physically, I don't think it looked like a team that hadn't played in 3 weeks. Did you?
No, they shot it fine. Like their jump shots are fine. But what you think they're going to come out and look like you and me getting up and down the court?
No, but I mean,
no, they looked the part.
Juwan said himself. I remember he said something like, "I remember when I was playing, it took you 4 or 5 days to start getting out of shape." And yeah, that makes sense when you're competing at that level. But Livers and Wagner played 38 minutes each and looked fine. Yeah. So did I. But people have said that you see it physically in the second game back, and we'll see. I mean, I don't know how many teams have had 4 days between games though.
Yeah, I just think it would have that Rutgers game still feels like a massive underspot, and I mean even this game was low scoring, but again Michigan had the legs in the second. Michigan dominated the fourth quarter of that game. I mean, it's not like they ran out of gas down the stretch. So they put Wisconsin away down the stretch. So definitely, I mean, Isaiah Livers was hitting jumpers early. I mean, it didn't look like a team that's just missing every shot like you would expect. I don't know. I mean, maybe we still see an effect. Maybe I don't know.
Let's assume we probably don't record before Rutgers. What do you think of this matchup? I know you haven't dug into it like you eventually will this week, but offhand.
I mean, Rutgers all of a sudden is back again. I hyped Rutgers up in December, and then I shit on Rutgers in January, and now they're back and they've won 5 out of 6. And
this Indiana Rutgers bet is going to be down to the wire.
Wait, what bet did we make?
We made a bet on Rutgers, Indiana.
Well, just
who's going to finish higher in the league?
Where are we at?
Yeah,
God, I don't feel good about that one at all. I don't think it's going to be down to the wire.
Well, right now it's kind of
no. Right now you've taken control of the situation.
We bet a stake on that, big boy.
All right. Well, good thing indoor dining is still limited. I
don't think I won't drive to Cleveland just to make you buy me a steak.
I'm worried about Indiana a bit here. But anyway, back to Rutgers. I think they've really got back to playing defense. They kind of lost their way, I feel like, a bit. But I think credit to Peichel to go and lose 5 games in a row and kind of keep that confidence and then bounce back. That's hard to do. They've gotten there. It hasn't always been pretty. It's not like they're beating great teams. Their wins are over Indiana, MSU, Northwestern, Minnesota, Northwestern. So that makes me a little nervous. I mean, you're obviously always a product of who you play. But, yeah. Do you have any Rutgers takes?
Yeah, they're up to 5th in the Big Ten in defense, and I feel like a month ago they were
last,
double digits or right around. They were last. Oh shit!
No, they were down there. I don't know.
Yeah, but they weren't even playing like the brand of basketball that you're kind of used to seeing from Rutgers. So yeah, I'm totally. I think when we made that wager, my real premise for it was that Rutgers' schedule is what it is. But It's still not as good as I thought Rutgers was going to be this year or hoped them to be. But
they're going to make the
look.
like they're a tournament
I'll put it
team.
this way. Yes, I'll put it this way. I had questions about what Michigan was going to look like coming into this game today. And I can sit here and say, oh, yeah, the physical things will show itself in the next game. Look, man, this team just keeps proving itself over and over again. So I'm just going to say they're just going to keep until they show me otherwise, right? If you're looking for reasons to question what Michigan's going to do, then it's just because you're looking for reasons to question them, right?
Yeah, you look at the on paper, Michigan's a better team than Rutgers. Michigan has matched up well with Rutgers in the past. You basically have to make jumpers to beat Rutgers because they're going to overhelp and try to cause turnovers and play disruptive. Michigan has guys who can make jumpers. They're a pain to play against, but I think you still have to like how Michigan sets up outside of the rest, return, whatever concerns. Like, that's a big issue.
They're 7th in the country in offense, 7th in the country in defense, 3rd in Ken Palm. Like, this is a hell of a basketball team. If it misses shots, right, it can lose to Rutgers, of course. But, the
Ken Palm line's 9.
And and that sounds about right to me. And, like, when I look at Michigan right now, it's just like, I don't really care what happens against Rutgers. Is that, like, fair? Yeah, like, let's just get to games against Illinois, Ohio State. Those are the games I don't even care about the Iowa game in particular. But, like,
that'll be a fun.
Those are the games I want to see. But those are the games I want to see because of, trying to get a real firm hold of March. Those are the games I want to see. And obviously the Big Ten championship is still very much in the balance, but this team has done things this year that have been so impressive that I am really curious to see it play like competition, which we rarely have gotten a chance to see.
Yeah, though, like that game at Ohio State, I know that's not the best home environment in the Big Ten, but these championship deciding games down the stretch. You're going to really miss having fans at them, I think. Like, it's one thing to not have fans at whatever, Michigan, Minnesota, or whatever. But now that you're in these, you look down what Michigan's schedule is going to be here these last few weeks, I think it'll really kind of stand out as far as, wow, like these are the games that would be kind of environments you remember for a long time, and instead they're 50 parents screaming in the stands. So I think you'll miss that a little bit coming up here. But I'm excited. I mean, this is what.
No, I agree. I mean, the thought of this Michigan Ohio State game in normal times would be like incredible.
Yeah, it'd be like those early 2012, 2013 Ohio State Michigan games that were really good, and now it'll be a great game, and the product on the court hasn't really suffered at all. It's just not quite the same.
Right. It's just seeing, it's just the noise, the guys who hit the shots that, are silencers on the road, things like that you're just missing, and it just sucks and whatever.
You want to talk a little Michigan State?
Are you super?
Oh,
yeah.
Do you have something else?
No, that's fine. So the Iowa game, a 30-point loss on the road, or I'm sorry, at home. It was after those back-to-back wins, I did kind of feel like, hey, I was, spilling gas all over the place, maybe ripe to get plucked. You win that game, back in the conversation a little bit, right? At least a chance. It'd be a reasonable conversation.
Mm-hmm. The problem is,
and you just get waxed.
I think Iowa was ripe to be plucked the first game, right? You miss your chance, and then turning that around and playing them again so soon after, I think is actually a really tough spot.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I did not see a 30-point loss coming. I did not see that coming. Look, it was kind of a perfect storm, right? Iowa comes out, they're making shots all over the place. People were pissed with how Michigan State was playing defense, deciding to, cheat off the non-shooters and throw extra help at Garza, as opposed to, it's the constant conversation around Iowa for 2 years now, right? Do you just try to shut down everyone else and let Luka get 35, or do you try to throw help at him and end up, trying to play recovery defense and giving Iowa shots, and then suddenly they start making threes, and now you're in trouble all over the place, whatever. Look, I get cheating off those guys a little bit, but I don't think it was the right play. I thought, and even beyond that, I thought Michigan State's closeouts weren't that great. I just thought it was just ass all the way around.
I mean, Connor McCaffrey hits 4 of 6 threes. You can be a little pissed. Like, you game plan, and you're like, this guy can't make threes, and he hits 4 of 6. That's sort of like that's like what you can complain about, right? He's
perfect storm.
32% 3-point shooter on his career. He'd hit 12 threes all year before that. So I get that. But again, the problem is Michigan State, you can say it's the wrong decision, but there's no one on that roster that can contain Garza one-on-one. So what are you supposed to do? Just let him score 40?
True. Maybe. I don't know.
The problem is there's also like Michigan State.
He scored 8 points in this. He scored 8 points in this game, and you lost by 30. So I don't know.
But you lost by 30 because you scored 58 points against Iowa, right? Like, you have to be able to put
That's a great point.
serious offense. Like, there's not really an answer to stop Iowa. They're going to score.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really what it comes back to, is you shoot 39% on twos and 29% on threes against Iowa, you're not going to win. You're not going to come close to winning, and they didn't.
No. Yeah, and I don't know where they come from here. Like this, the only thing I could write after this game was if this thing snowballs, right, and like Michigan State still had something to play for. Yeah, things have been bad, but Michigan State could still convince itself that it was playing for something here in recent weeks, and you go and get housed by Iowa, and now you are 4-8 in the league. You're basically, barring a miracle, you're out of things. It's okay. How bad can this go now? Are you going to be competitive in these games moving forward, or are you just going to go get kicked around here in the last 3-4 weeks? Whatever, where, it can have residual effects beyond just, wins and losses in these weeks. It can be, okay, what happens after this? And I'm talking about whether it be player defection, whether it be, just dinging to the perception of a program that has so much pride to it that Izzo, frankly, to his credit, has spent a quarter century building, that, you're just not used to seeing them in a spot like this. And, I imagine there will be a bounce back year. Don't get me wrong, but there is residual damage in college sports when things can go off the rails. And Michigan State's been pretty impervious to it for a lot of this tenure. What happens if this goes really, really bad? Who knows? I don't know.
See, I look at it a little differently in the sense that I think most programs have seasons like this, right? Like, what makes Michigan State's run of making the NCAA tournament so insane is that it's really hard not to have a year like this where a couple games don't go your way. You're just not particularly great. And then you don't make the NCAA tournament. Other programs also bounce back from it really without any sort of worry. So I don't really see this as like, oh, well, everything is doomed as far as, oh, Michigan State's program is going to fall apart. yeah, maybe someone transfers or whatever else, but I think there's too much built to really turn that around based on one bad season that's obviously COVID impacted and whatever else. So I think that's probably a little bit of a overreaction as far as, okay, well, this is all going to fall apart and this undoes everything we've done for decades, right? So I don't completely buy into that. I do think there are real roster concerns that aren't easy to answer with the players on the current roster. But other than that, I don't see it as a long-term, we forgot how to win games. Tom Izzo's won too many games to forget that and build his program up to do that.
Well, okay. I agree. Tom Izzo has not forgotten how to coach, has not forgotten how to win games. There's no chance of that. I am not worried in particular about long-term future of Michigan State. Their recruiting is what it is. I think going to be fine. This will be a blip, would be my guess. But the way that this year is going right now, things go really bad, right? I would not be surprised to see a couple guys possibly leave this offseason. And I also feel like the worse things get, the more likelihood there is that you could possibly see maybe an extra guy who, you know what I mean? Like, there are things, and Michigan State has been a program built on upperclassmen for a long time. Well, if you have defections and things like that, well, that starts to kind of clear out that reservoir that you're used to kind of having every year. And you're seeing it right now. This team does not have upperclassmen that are producing, right? So if you get guys leaving, which is something that really hasn't happened at Michigan State, NBA guys here and there, but that's about it. I don't know. It was just a talking point because I really can't break down how else this team is bad right now.
I see what you're saying, but hear me out a little bit. Do you think maybe the fact that no one has left over the last however many years is probably how you end up in this spot and maybe why you need maybe a little bit of healthy attrition, right? Like you need to be able, like teams have to turn over. Do you agree with that at all?
You could make that case. I mean, they wouldn't have wanted Xavier Tillman to leave, yes. But well, here's the thing. Michigan State isn't used to as many recruiting misses as it currently has. So, yes, attrition in this case probably would lead to potentially a stronger overall product. So I think that's fair to say. At the same time, there have been guys in the past who didn't really do much as sophomores who were key pieces as seniors, right? So, like, I'm just going to pull out the name Julius Marble, right? And I'm not saying this is not me saying I think Julius Marble is going to transfer. This is not me saying anything like that. But like a guy like Julius Marble, right, stays 4 years and by his fourth year is just an old son of a bitch who like plays Michigan State basketball, right, and is like a reason that they win games and does things like that. You know what I mean? Whereas right now he's not really doing much. So a guy like that, in terms of they're just upperclassmen who are around, right? Well, if you lose a couple of those guys, it starts to look a lot different. Like Michigan State relying on the transfer portal or Michigan State relying on freshmen to be catalysts, that's a different version of the program than what Tom Izzo has built, right?
I mean, the 2018 team, when, or I guess it would be the 2017 team, they relied on plenty of freshmen, right? I mean, obviously they had experience, but
yeah, they barely made the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, but you have to retool, right? Like, so think about this: every recruit that you land isn't going to be a shit kicker by the time they're a senior just because they spent 4 years in your program. You need a little bit of healthy attrition. And I think so. If you have recruiting misses, I don't think it's the end of the world if a couple guys leave and whatever else. Like, if Michigan State was just running this whole team back next year, I think that would be worse, right? Like, you need to have a little bit of change up because the kids coming in are going to have an opportunity to play. The kids coming in, I think everyone really likes. I think it's just a natural progression at this point.
I do, and it's not only a matter of moving bodies through; it's also a matter of opening minutes up because
Touches, minutes, yeah.
Touches, right? Because I mean, everyone knows Izzo is always going to be maybe lean to playing some veterans a little bit more than some young guys here and there. But this week for Michigan State, and I'm sure that this is just really an unenjoyable listen for Michigan State fans, and do apologize. But I don't see let me ask you this. What is best case scenario, reasonable best case scenario for the next 3 weeks of this Michigan State season?
I think you can get a couple wins and try to steal a game against Michigan. I mean, that's what it comes down to, right? Like, if you can go and beat Michigan last week in the season, that's an accomplishment that I mean, they're not making the tournament with what's left on the schedule. I think it's pretty hard to paint that path, but you can beat your rivals and cost them a Big Ten championship. That's something. What do you say is the best case?
I would tend to agree with you. It would be pick off Michigan, and win a couple games that you have reason to, feel good about yourselves, because it's been a hard season for Michigan State. Like, I'm not saying these things with, cold-heartedly. Like, it's been a hard season. I knowing people up there, like, I do feel bad for a lot of these guys. No one expected things to go this way, and they're not pros. And, a guy like Josh Langford, this is his last college season after what's been a crazy long road, and to go out this way has to be really hard. So some empathy for them, I think, is reasonable. And
here's my question.
Going out, though? Okay.
Like, usually in this case, you'd be like, okay, we need to feed our young guys and really see what we have for next year. I don't know who that is on the Michigan State roster that you would say we need to get him going over the last 2 weeks of the season. Like, who are you confident is a starter on next year's team?
I mean, I'll put it this way. I would look. I mean, Aaron Henry should be doing what Aaron Henry does, but like, you need to light a fire under Joey Hauser's ass. You need to be playing and letting Gabe Brown get up shots. I want to let Malik Hall get up shots, right? I want, there needs to at some point be a meeting here with the likes of Malik Hall, Gabe Brown, guys like that, and be like, listen, man, this might be your team coming out of this thing, and, step up and make shots, or take shots and make shots, and blah, blah, blah. Because that's very real. So, Rocket Watts, what does he want to make of this at this point? I don't know. But he's so far out of the picture that it's kind of head scratching. So, yeah, guys like Hall, Gabe Brown, Gabe Brown should be taking 10 shots a game, not Josh Langford. Sorry.
Yeah, you got to give him a chance at this point, just based on what you're playing for in the future.
Agreed.
Did anyone expect him to play less this year than last year?
No.
It's just, I don't know. It's already his junior year. I mean, that's just crazy. Like, he never really broke through, and that's tough.
Has he really had a chance?
No.
So, yeah, that's tough. Like, the Langford coming back this year, and this is not to it's not taking a shot at Langford. He had every right to do what he wanted to do, right? But this is not what Gabe Brown signed up for.
No, and it's not what is going to make Michigan State a better team next year.
Right.
It'd be one thing if you were winning and you were 14-4 or whatever, and
No doubt.
then you ride Josh Langford. But I think you have to give Gabe Brown at least a chance down the stretch.
Yeah. And Izzo's kind of in a tough spot on that one there too.
Yeah.
He's a loyal dude, and no one is as loyal as Joshua Langford. And it'd be really hard to say, hey, you've given your body to this program. You've played your ass off all of these years. You were part of this recruiting class that, kind of shifted the direction of the program, blah, 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 blah. That's a tough spot to now be like, hey, now I need you to kind of take one for the team and hand over the reins and sit and watch or defer for your last month. That's a big ask, man. Especially when Gabe Brown hasn't exactly done anything to be like,
well, that's the other part of the problem.
Give him the shot. Right, exactly.
Coaches don't like to play players who don't always do what they expect them to play. And that's hard to, I don't think Gabe Brown has that trust. I don't know. It's a tough spot all around. I mean, this is the week. This is the last week I think we can sit and say, okay, this is where Michigan State could make a little momentum, right? I mean, Purdue and Indiana are beatable teams.
Yeah.
Michigan State had Purdue beat. It's I know you're on the road, but it's an empty building. You'll be fine. And Indiana, I know they have some weird voodoo magic to beat Michigan State, but
right.
Again, you don't trust Indiana in any game. So you can go and win those two games and you're 6-8, and then you have home games against Illinois and Ohio State. Who knows? Yeah,
here's the interesting thing about Michigan State is if you see them on paper, right? And you say, 10-8, 4-8 in the league, the numbers aren't great, but whatever. You can, beat Purdue, beat Indiana. You've got some upset opportunities. You can beat Maryland. It's reasonable for them to put together an 11 seeds resume, right? But what that looks like on paper and what this team currently looks like on the court, I feel like I'm usually the one where it's look, everyone's overreacting. In the big picture, they can still get, you know what I mean? To the we're overreacting in the moment, the big picture, they're fine, right? No. The way this team looks on the court right now is so bad that that the numbers don't really matter to me. You know what I mean?
This is the week. If you lose a game this week, I don't really see any path. If you go 2-0 this week, I think there's still a path. What's the other game Michigan State has to make up?
Indiana and Michigan.
Indiana. I mean, you could put together a little win streak just beating Indiana. That's 2 games. I mean, come on.
I mean,
the games are there. Those games are there. And then you're just, okay, well, I don't know. If you don't win 2 games this week, though, I can't really get there, right? The math doesn't add up at that point. It's done.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that they're playing 2 teams that are looking at Michigan State as, okay, this is you have to win this game because the league's so tough, So now at the same time, that was Penn State a week ago, right?
Well, Penn State just lost to Nebraska.
Penn State just lost to Nebraska. So, maybe throw that out the window. But, Purdue and Indiana, even at their worst, haven't looked as bad as Michigan State has at times.
But Purdue got whooped by Michigan State for 38 minutes and then somehow pulled that game out, right? You have to have a little confidence in that sense.
That feels like it was 5 years ago, and it was only 3 weeks ago.
It's quite a season.
No, more than that. That was January 8th. Sorry. 5.
Oh, yeah. All right. I think probably enough at this point with this podcast. I feel like
you don't want to keep going on this topic?
No, and I feel like the internet's so jagged. We're 2 seconds apart from each other. It's driving me crazy. We got to wrap this up.
All right. Well, we appreciate everyone listening to this Sunday night edition of The Moving Screen. It's February 14th, so there's going to be plenty of
1 month till Selection Sunday.
Love it. Outstanding. Let's get this thing across the finish line, man. Get back to the golf course. All right. So thank you, Dylan. Appreciate you doing this tonight. We appreciate everyone listening. Subscribe to The Moving Screen in the iTunes store. Leave a review if you would be so kind. Subscribe to UM Hoops. Subscribe to The Athletic. Tip your bartenders and servers.